We should start to think about the future, and we haven't heard much about the future in these debates. We've heard about an economy that's going to have high tariffs, that we're going to bring manufacturing back. I'm assuming they mean the old-style manufacturing. We haven't really talked about technology, innovation. Kind of the drivers of the economy today have been completely lost. In addition to that, we heard a lot of anti-capitalism or anti-free enterprise speak. And I don't understand that. I mean, capitalism, free enterprise is what built this country, and we're not talking about this.
All right. Roger, it seems like we have plenty of discussions amongst ourselves about AI and automation and autonomous cars and just innovation in general. That gets so lost when it comes to public policy.
Well, I think there are a bunch of factors driving that. Technology's played a huge role in this election cycle because the internet has changed the nature of how campaigns are run so fundamentally. To me, I think the thing investors really need to pay attention to is less about what candidates say than about what this process implies for the future of, in terms of uncertainty. I think that investors have gotten used to the notion that the United States has stable institutions and that we can count on the banking system, we can count on the government in general to stay predictable within certain ranges. And I think that this particular campaign has blown all of that up. I think there were issues already under Obama because of the Republican obstruction of his legislative agenda. But I think now you're in open warfare. And I think that's really bad for the investment markets in general. I think it raises capital costs everywhere. And again, I don't know how real the problem is, but I think people have to start to look at instability in our basic institutions in a way that literally we haven't had to look at in my lifetime. And I find that really scary. The notion that we might have 4 more years like the last 8 of continuous obstruction and, something awful might happen. We might not be able to respond because we can't get the two sides to talk to each other. That part really scares me. And I don't think it matters what we do in Silicon Valley at this point. We've got to fix those institutions or we're in big trouble.
Eric, I mean, the eyes of the world are on the U.S. this week to see how this election plays out. Deutsche Bank says that European equities could fall 5 to 10% if there were a Trump victory. I was in the UK over the weekend. They're preparing for a Brexit-like market slide if Trump were to win. But it's so hard to predict how a president-elect would act based on what we've seen in the campaign trail. How do you price all of it in? How do you predict what they'll do?
Well, that's right. I mean, I think the markets are saying, with Hillary Clinton, we know pretty much it's going to be same old, same old. We're accustomed to that. Therefore, let's bid the market up because there's not going to be any major disruption. With Trump, we don't know. We don't know. On the other hand, there are the institutions that will prevent him from doing extreme things. We believe, in particularly Congress. But there's a lot of unknown if Trump wins.
Eric, Grover Norquist was on last hour arguing that Hillary Clinton, under a presidency of hers, she would regulate startups like Uber to death. She'd be terrible for the gig economy because she wants employee-level protections for contractors. You deal with a broad spectrum of companies that rely on unique and nimble business models to survive. Are you concerned about that?
Of course I am. I'm concerned about the attack in general against private enterprise and capitalism. I mean, there was a survey done early on by Harvard University earlier this year that shows that 51% of millennials are not capitalists. And so we're raising a whole generation of people who believe that capitalism is a bad thing. So together with that comes more regulation, more government interference, and that is not good for innovation. Innovation needs to be free, play within the rules, but the rules need to be well known and they need to stay there for the long term.